depression and longing and searching, and like where the question, what is the point of life, would not leave. And I was trying so desperately to entertain myself away from that question, but there was nothing that would push the urgency of that question out of my mind. And so it was just kind of a whole collapse, you know, like that. And there was no one single event like the death of somebody or something like that that points to it, but that's often the experience for people. So, and then we start asking questions. We start asking these kinds of questions, and we start looking around for like who's got theories about this question, you know, and then, you know, we start taking the stuff in, and then we start practicing it. And, you know, that's, we learn about suffering, we learn about the causes of suffering, and we learn about the path, which is to uproot the misunderstanding and misunderstanding that my misguided actions are rooted in, which are leading me to propel to, you know, to recreate this cycle of suffering like that. So in this system, when the Europeans started, like, had their first few encounters with Tibetans in the 1900s, and there were very few of them that were allowed in and did this. They called them, they didn't call them Buddhists, they called them Lamaists, because there was such a focus on the teacher within this tradition. And India is the same, right? It's like we put this label Hinduism upon all the traditions of India, but as far as the way I understand it is there's not one tradition by any stretch of the imagination. It's just all these different lineages that go back through their teachers, and they teach things, and some can be kind of similar to each other, and some can be radically different from each other, but it's an emphasis on a living teacher, on a lineage, parampara, like a lineage of teachers coming down. And so the Tibetans just have operated in the exact same way. It's the same kind of system like that. And then they say the root of the path is finding a teacher. Finding a teacher, and then taking time to investigate and find the right teacher, and then glue yourself to that teacher, glue yourself to those teachings. And so I go back and forth about how I feel this applies to our day and age now. And but I think there's an interesting thing. So the next question that comes up in this review is, what are the 10 characteristics of a qualified teacher? So, because I think this is common. People are like, well, I need a teacher, so what do I do now? And so then they say, well, here's the 10 characteristics of a qualified teacher. Go looking for these. But there's a very funny thing, because who's ever made a list of, like, the 10 characteristics or the 5 characteristics of, like, the partner you would like to find? Go look for those things. Well, there's this funny thing that happens that, like, when we're desperate and we're looking and we're like, I got to find this person, we're like creating a very clear picture, and then we're very prone to meeting somebody and taking our very clear picture of who we want and lobbing it over the top of them, and that works out for the first couple weeks or the first couple months, and maybe even a few years if we get ourselves really into it. And then all of a sudden we're like, you tricked me. You're not who you said you were in the beginning. And like, it wasn't actually that they tricked us. It was that I came in with such like a hopeful story about who I really want this person to be, that I actually convinced myself that this person was that person. You know, like, I mean, and I had the karma to see them that way for a while and whatever. So the interesting same thing can kind of happen with a teacher. So I think anyway, we'll say, I guess we'll just go through these and then, yeah, we'll talk more about it. 10 characteristics of a qualified lama, it says, teacher. One is called Bulwa in Tibetan, and that means tamed. They're tamed. And what it means is that and it's like to duel a horse, to tame a horse. Their mental afflictions are tamed. So you watch them and they live an ethical life. They spend their time doing important things, you know. They spend their time doing important things. The mental afflictions of anger and jealousy and greediness and selfishness and pride and all these things do not seem to be running rampant in them, don't seem to be running the show. They seem to be tamed like that. They live with discipline, they don't harm others, and they use their life to benefit others. And this is, so it means controls themselves well controlled. The second one is Shiva, And Shiva is the word for peace, Shanti, but in Sanskrit. Shiva is the word for peace, and this is code word for concentration. So, one, they have the ability to sit down and to meditate. They can concentrate in their formal seated meditation practice. And two, they have this mindfulness throughout their day, where they can maintain their ethical practice and awareness, and maintain mindfulness about life as they go through the day. 3 is near Shiva. Near is like really tamed, very peaceful. Near Shiva, very peaceful, and that is code word for wisdom. And these 3, the first 3 of the 10, are the extraordinary trainings. It's called the 3 extraordinary trainings. The 3 extraordinary trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom. So, near Shiva, code word for wisdom, the extraordinary training of wisdom, means how they have an understanding of correct views and how reality works, and they practice and live according to that. The 4th one, and then I'll stop with the Tibetan. Well, I'll say it, Yunten Lakpa, it's good qualities. And this is that they should have spiritual qualities that exceed myself, the student. I need to learn from somebody who knows more than me. They have a high level of virtue and kindness, and they live according to that, and they live in a way that I aspire to reach that, what they have, and they have a high level of knowledge. So good qualities. The 5th one is Tsunche, which is joyful effort. And Tsunche is the 4th of the 6 perfections, and it's defined as they take great joy in doing the right thing, in doing good things. So even when it's harder to do the right thing, even when it's harder to, stick to what you truly believe in, to truly stick to your spiritual practice, the teacher takes great effort and do that. So they do all the things around the Dharma with great joy and with great enthusiasm, even when it's hard. They maintain that kind of, it's not the like, oh, I have to do this kind of thing. It's the opposite of that. It's like, yes, I'm doing it, bring it on. No matter what, I'm doing it. Joyful effort. Lungi Chuk is rich in scripture. So they have both a vast understanding of a lot of the teachings, of a lot of the different parts of the teachings, a lot of the different scriptures and sources, and they also have a deep understanding of those sources of the texts. And then the 3rd one, Daini Raktok, they have realized emptiness. Realized ultimate reality or emptiness. So up here we have near Shiva the extraordinary training of wisdom, and this is talking about a deep understanding of ultimate reality. But it's a deep intellectual understanding, also based in meditation and personal experience. And then this one is ideally that they've done what we call seen emptiness directly, which has had a deep yogic perception of ultimate reality. So they've learned about it, they've studied it, they've meditated on it, and all of that, and then they've been very kind to others and practiced their ethics, and they've learned how to meditate really well, and they've had joyful effort in all their practices. They've done all this, and it's culminated with this direct perception of how reality exists. And they talk about this as being a pivotal point in our spiritual progress where things change. Because until this kind of a point, until we have a realization of something, it's not really in us so much. So this is this direct realization of ultimate reality. The 8-1 Make-den is that they're a master teacher, which means not just that they know stuff really well, but it means that they also know students and know how I need to hear it really well. So they know a big, vast amount of stuff, but can they package it for me in a step-by-step way that I can take it in and actually interact with it where I am, right? We can only hear stuff that lands with me where I'm at. I can't hear stuff that's well beyond. It's like taking, a first grader and trying to teach them quantum physics. It's just, there's nothing to land there. So, and with our teachers, it's like this too. They're like these great quantum physicists, but can they actually come down to where I'm at and express it? I had this wild physics teacher in college that I always remember. He was just awesome. He was brilliant. He was the worst teacher in the world. And I didn't mind because it was like whatever he would talk about in class was so cool, but you still had to go back and read the entire chapter in your physics book and teach yourself how to do the problems because he couldn't even begin to cover that. That was not in the realm. So, image of love. And this has to do with their motivation, and then they sometimes they'll boil it down and say, best if they have all 10, but if you can't find that, but what they should have these 3, and I don't remember how it goes. But then in the end, they say this is the most important. They teach because they love us. They don't teach because they want to be famous. They don't teach because they don't want money. They don't teach because they want whatever in the Lululemon bag, which I'm excited to see what's in the Lululemon bag. Fancy cups. They don't teach because of any of that. They actually teach because they love us. And it's very funny because I'm not much of a teacher, but I don't teach very much, and it's not like I'm not because anyway. I was going to say because I'm not really that great at it, but then I didn't want that to be like, whatever. But I'm not much of a teacher. I don't teach very much. It's not something I do a huge amount of. But I do remember when I was in the beginning of my career, it seemed like the pinnacle of all things to be this great teacher that you walked in. And it's very funny because now that I've had the opportunity to teach a couple classes, I'm like, oh my gosh, they work so hard for it. It's just so funny. It no longer looks like it's like my daughter, she looks at life and the pinnacle of life would to be I don't know, be some famous, what are they, the angel, runway angel, and be famous and have people take pictures of you everywhere you go, and that's what she really sees as being happy, yeah. It's just being the center of attention and having all this, and because you totally don't see how much work goes into that behind the scenes, to be a great musician, oh how great, all the fame, all the adoring fans, and it's yeah, can you imagine throwing on your jeans and going to 7-Eleven in the middle of the night and having people follow you with cameras, and it'd be terrible, and we get that now, but from that perspective, and I used to see being a teacher as that, there was something so great about that, and it's very kind of comical, but it's really not, it's clear to me that all my teachers just teach out of love because I alone have been an unbelievable pain in the ass to them, and then they've got hundreds, if not thousands, of students, and you magnify that, and it's like being the old lady that lived in the shoe with all these ungrateful kids like me, and it's oh god. So it's important that they do teach out of love, and I can't imagine any other reason that they would. Kyoapong is a great one, and it's the translation is. Their disgust is eliminated, but I think it's actually more it's they've gotten rid of all impatience. So I don't even know how to translate it. They're beyond becoming discouraged is how they translate it. Beyond discouragement. And this is awesome. It's they will tell me again and again. It's they're the ideal kindergarten teacher who just tells us with love, or with love in creative ways, or maybe with power, with force, whatever way I need to hear over and over and over and over the same thing. And if you've been studying for a while, if you've ever had the great, awesome opportunity of listening to a teaching that you were at 3 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, for me, I'm listening to this teaching right now that I was at 12 years ago, and it's just so funny because I can remember how I thought about things then, and I can remember, and there's like there's these things that like, because all of a sudden I'll get something and I'm like, oh, I just got this. Why didn't you tell me? And then like I'll listen to teachings that I was at for the last 20 years, and they were telling me that from day 1, and then they were telling me that at like day 2 and year 2 and like year 4 and like all the time, and I just couldn't hear it. I just totally couldn't hear it. And then I would and then I would go up and I would ask the question like, well, yeah, but I know you just spent this whole week teaching us, Bishop Michael, but like, what should I do? I remember like going to a course and then having a breakfast meeting with Bishop and being like, well, what should I do? And like, he was so kind and actually answered me, but like, what he probably wanted to do was like slap me a few times and say, what do you think I've been talking about for the last like 45? Like, we just had 30 hours of class. That was the topic. Exactly what you should do. Like, yeah. I was like the magic pill that makes it all okay. All that stuff you talk about is actually kind of hard, and I want the magic pill, please. What's that? So they're beyond becoming discouraged, and they just like, again and again and again, because they deeply understand that we can only take things in when we're ready to hear it, you know? And it's so great because the universe has been presenting stuff to us for such a long time. But then when it dawns on us, it is ours at that point, you know? And it's not ours actually until that point, but the teacher gets to play the role of like just patiently again and again and again, holding us while we fall down in the same hole we've been falling down in and helping us climb back out of the hole, and then trying to help us maneuver around the hole, but then we go jump back in the hole, and then we start whining from the bottom of the hole, and then they put down their ladder, and they're like, come on, you know, like that's what the teacher does for us, like so kind. And they can only do that because they really love us. Even when they get flustered or they seem to get flustered, it's still because they love us. That's like that. So these are the qualities of a qualified teacher that we're told to go look for. Go find, here's the story. Go find a teacher that has all these qualities and go look for them. And then glue yourself to them and learn from them. So, but what's the issue? We were just talking about it. When do we learn something? When we realize it, when we're ready to hear it, not based on when someone else is saying it to us. So there's this other interesting thing. What's the only way we can ever see somebody having these qualities? Start working on them for ourselves. Like, I can't see these qualities in someone else unless there's some effort, some energy, and some vestige of these qualities arising in myself. Right? They say the Buddha's cousin, Devadatta, was that his name? Devadatta, Devadatta. The Buddha's cousin. Oh no, there was the Buddha's cousin, but then there was another. There was an attendant or something that hung out with the Buddha for like 12 years and served him. And people were like, at the end of it, I can't remember his name now. Devadatta was the jealous cousin when they were kids and stuff. But like, he was. No, Ananda was loyal, right? This one wasn't. This one didn't like. So there was a student that hung out with the Buddha for like 12 years, and then people would be like, "What's it like living with the Buddha?" And he's like, you know, yes, he's got this like weird halo of light, but he's just a normal person, just as flawed and just as faulty as all the rest of us. And he really doesn't have any good qualities at all. He's just a regular guy, and I don't see what the big deal is about the Buddha. And I've lived with him for 12 years, so it's like, you know, this is what is pointed out. There's, you know, we can only see things if they're with us. So the way to do that, the way to actually cultivate the teacher that we need to have that has the qualities that can guide us is just like Lindsay just said, is to just practice being these things. Because we're all teachers to the people that are around us all the time. We're all examples, we're all that. So it's to practice living an ethical life. It's to practice developing concentration so that we can maintain primarily a mindfulness of our ethics all throughout the day when things get busy and crazy, and we're still grounded in who we are and who we want to be. I mean, really, that's, you know, and then maintain and, you know, develop and study and think about and meditate on wisdom and understanding reality and, you know, all of these things, cultivating joyful efforts. In the, it's almost like backwards in the Ashtanga and the 8 limbs in the yoga system, like, there's the yamas, like don't kill, don't lie, don't steal, don't do all that stuff. And then there's the niyamas, which is like, what do you practice to live a spiritual life? You know, you engage in self-study, svadhyaya. You every day you get out of some great scripture and you interact with this text in one way or another. You think about these sacred ideas. You look at your own life through the lens of some kind of brilliant sacred ideas. You know, every day this is a practice. Every day, you know, so in a way, these could be practices that we're engaged in all the time. You know, focusing on emptiness, loving the people around us, being in the relationship. When we're standing in the kitchen, we're standing at work, we're standing at whatever, just for a second, drop the whole storyline and just love is defined as the wish that others be happy. And so just when you're at work, when you're there for whatever, just drop the whole storyline for just a second while they're talking to you and just say to yourself, unless you can say it out loud, which is great, I hope you're happy. I want you to be happy. You know, be the image of love. Like, just be that. Practice taking that on. So if we practice these things, we put a seed in our own heart, and when that seed in our own heart blossoms, we will see guides, friends, teachers who have these qualities, and it will occur to us that they are qualified to teach us, and then we will be willing to follow them, and we will be willing to do what they say, even when it goes against what's comfortable for me, even when it goes against what I want to do right now, because there's going to become a point, if we want to transform, if we want to get to the point that I am at now of being stuck inside my own little box, completely driven by these insecurities and these fears and these self-doubt, and like kind of hiding in this little shape because I'm deeply afraid that the people will see through the external shell that I put on and see the brokenness that's inside of there. If I want to get from that to that state that we described a minute ago of total awakening, which is fully realize who we are and totally free and out of the box, if I want to get through that, there's going to be this process of the destruction, right? There's like in the Hindu system, right? There's like, how does it go? Like Shiva. Shiva is the destructive force of the universe, right? And then
creation, maintenance, and dissolution.
Creation, maintenance, and dissolution. So in order for something new to be created, there has to be the dissolution of the old. And so the whole process is, in order for the awakening of this potential that's inside of us, there has to be the dissolution of the current me structure that I'm stuck in. That has to dissolve. And that's hard. And it hurts. It'll be freedom, and you know this, because every freaking hard thing you've made yourself, you've held yourself in the fire and made yourself go through something, every hard thing you've ever done like that, on the other side, it's like, oh, thank God. Whoa! It's like a huge thing has been shed. So imagine what it's going to be like when we finally shed this like little limited ego construct and we can actually be free and radiant like we're meant to be. You know, I mean, it's like it's huge, but that's the solution has to happen first. And for us to stick with a path, especially in today's day and age where we don't understand, we don't have in us anymore this strong thing of you find a teacher. We don't have in us you find a spouse and you stay with them forever. We don't have with us you're with your church forever. You're with your teacher forever. We don't have that. We're like, well, you disappointed me. I'm on to the next thing. We live in a culture where we're constantly picking it up. It got a little uncomfortable, so I'm out of here. You know? And the problem is that if a path is working on us, it will get uncomfortable. It will get uncomfortable, and if we continuously drop it and go try to find something new when it gets uncomfortable, we're never going to get anywhere. We're never going to get into the nitty-gritty, into the stage of just dissolution where our ego is ripped away, you know? And then from the ashes of this fire, we reemerge as what we're meant to be, as what we're here, you're dying to be, what we're yearning to be, like that. So we have to believe in the path that we decide on. So we have to take time, and we have to believe in the person that we're following. Because that person will tell us to do stuff that we don't want to do. And we have to, by the time they do that, we ideally have developed enough faith in them. They've told us to do enough things, and we've stuck through it enough, and it's worked out, and it's helping, so that when they really tell us to do the stuff we don't want to do, we're fighting it with all of our being, or maybe doing a half-assed job, whatever, but we stay in the game. We don't just run. And so to start that whole thing off, start being all of these things, or as many of these things as as resonate. Do the right thing even when it's hard, joyful effort. And we can all do that, right? you've made commitments that later it's not convenient and it doesn't turn out to work, and so it's very tempting to just say, I can't do that anymore, I'm sorry. I mean, that's been a big one for me that I've really worked on, for a while. Beyond getting discouraged. How many times ever get impatient with somebody in your life because they're doing the same thing they always do? I do all the time. All of these things are things that we can do. Any thoughts? So many thoughts.
I have a couple of thoughts.
Okay.
I worked with a teacher for around 10 years, and I became disillusioned. But maybe there was also some reason to become disillusioned. So, I guess it's not one way.
Yeah.
So you have to also to know yourself in that way too. So, and I'm not clear on my connection or disconnection. So there's that factor. And the other thing I wanted to say was, I think of teachers like Trungpa Rinpoche, the teacher from Pema Chodron's teacher, and how he was an alcoholic and a womanizer, as far as I understand. So he didn't necessarily meet number one, the ethical part, and yet he was regarded as a great teacher. So that, is there a point where the teacher, your conception of ethics may not match the teacher's? The teachers may be different from what you think. Maybe they get to that point where, that's the kind of question.
Those are big, awesome questions.
Right.
Huge. And check out, I remember when I first came into Dharma, 22 years ago or something, and hearing about Trungpa Rinpoche and his antics, and being like, oh my gosh, I just couldn't, and judging him,
Right.
and judging him so strongly. What's so interesting, you can still go all sorts of places, and you still find students of him who are incredibly dedicated. Shambhala is still fully thriving and happening. Pema Chodron is one of the most miraculous, amazing teachers we have alive at this day. And Pema Chodron stayed. She stayed through all of that. And isn't it phenomenal to imagine how a teacher like her, a student like her, was with a teacher like that?
Right.
I mean, maybe she was a party girl at some point, but she strikes me as someone who's always been incredibly introverted. And it's hard to imagine her in disco clothes doing all the crazy stuff that was happening in the South. So it's wild. It's a very intense and interesting thing. And one thing, because my teacher has had all sorts of scandals and stuff like that in the last 10 years. And it's a very interesting thing because when Pema there's some interview where she's asked, what was up with Rinpoche? Why did he do all that stuff? She's like, I have no idea. So she didn't say he had no ethics, but he was good at this. That wasn't her answer. Her answer was I don't know. But at the same time, her life, you read her book, she's still quoting him all the time. She's still his student. He is her teacher, and she stayed.
Right.
She stayed. But the first thing you pointed out was we have to also be true to what's in here. And above all, the teacher's point of the whole practice, it's an interesting process. We're I don't know anything. I need to find somebody that does know something so I can get help. Okay, you're the one. You know something. We, in a way, give our power outside of us. But the point is that the teacher ignites our power and our understanding back inside of us so that we, with some kind of wisdom and understanding, can start to really tune into our own intuition and follow our own wisdom. And my guess is that Pema had an amazing way of navigating her own internal sense of what's right, what's wrong, what works for me, and then also being able to, it's two different things. It's a different thing to say he had no ethics, but he was a good teacher, versus to say, I don't know what he's up to. That doesn't, what he says and what he shows me and what he shows me about my mind is blowing my mind and changing my life. What he's doing doesn't work for me. I don't need to do that. I don't need to emulate that. I don't need to condone it or be part of it. But he's teaching me incredible things. So I don't know. He's my teacher, but there's a shelving. There's not a saying he has no ethics or he's not living by his ethics.
Right.
You see, like, the difference? Like,
Yeah.
and I think it's a delicate kind of like way to navigate. I like to think of the time when Trungpa Rinpoche was here. What was happening in our culture?
Right.
Madness. Right? Mayhem. Like, sex, drugs, everything goes. Like they talk about the Kali Yuga and like no ethics. Hi. like anything, right? Everything and anything. I got this note from a friend the other night. She'd forgotten to do something, and she was so funny. She's like, "Sorry, I forgot. The 80s were a very long decade." Just cracked me up. You know, like, I mean, what I heard was I was doing a lot of things, and a lot of my brain cells were whatever. So it's an interesting thing about that. How do we look at someone and judge if they have these qualities? Because could it be possible that, yes, Trungpa Rinpoche was, it seems that the evidence is very strongly suggesting that he was sleeping with lots of women. Maybe even some of them were married. Maybe they were his students, which right straight away is a bizarre power play, which we would all say is like completely and entirely inappropriate, right? If you're a therapist, if you're a teacher, if you're a professor, you don't get involved with somebody who's, like it's a power differential, and that's not appropriate because it's not, And so that was all happening. But what was going on in his mind is something that we don't know. That's something we actually don't know. I know that if I went around and was behaving in the stuff that he was doing, that I would have to call that unethical. Like, I don't see a circumstance, from my mind, in my capacity right now, where I could do those things and have it be ethical. But I don't actually know. Maybe he was getting our attention. Maybe and when you meet people who were students of his then, who are still practicing, they understand. They understand ego. They understand, like, they have been through. And I've met some of the greatest practitioners that are alive now that were his students. And they're phenomenal. And, like, imagine what it was like to be trying to hold on. Where you go and you sit, because he was also hardcore. He taught all the three, like, Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana. He was hardcore teaching and practicing and asking them to practice a lot. Hour a day of shamatha meditation, like regular, like before you move up, like all this stuff. He demanded a lot of practice from his students, and then at the same time to be coming in like drunk and doing all this crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
The karma was laid for the lessons to be there. Who knows who was attracted to the practice
because of that. Totally. There were other lamas around at the time that weren't doing things like that. So there was other places other people could go. But who knows who was there? Because, they were 20-year-olds partying in the 70s. What are you drawn to as a 20-year-old partying in the 70s, It's wild. So, yeah.
It's hard to tell.
It's hard to tell.
I mean, I had a teacher like that. What you're describing, it's like was a teacher that I had.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of so I still wonder about it, but I haven't given up.
Cool.
Because you can leave a teaching and then give up.
Yeah.
But I didn't give up.
Yeah. What you're talking about is that level of discernment that's the point, is we're honing this level of discernment deep inside at such a subtle place and looking so honestly at ourselves. And when am I getting triggered and having a judgmental response? Or when is this? And the cool thing is, one thing, which is, of course, for the logic, the one thing, until I am omniscient and can read somebody's mind, the one thing I have no idea about is the motivations that drive you. So we're saying image of love. They teach out of love. They have joyful effort. They live according to ethics. I don't know. So it's almost a funny setup from the beginning, because how can I judge that about anybody else? I can see their behavior, but we have numerous proofs of behavior that they're in a whole different level of like, there's this great story that I love.
Are they projecting it, or are we projecting it on them from the whole emptiness point of view?
Well, if I'm seeing it, I'm projecting it on them. I mean, there's this great story about a lama with his two attendants, and they're all monks. They go over to visit another lama in a different tradition, and they're offered a big glass of chang. And in this one tradition, you're not allowed to drink alcohol. In fact, it's one of the top vows that, like, if a small amount of alcohol touches your lips, you've just voided your vows. It's a very strong monk vow. So this other high lama in this other tradition, they drink alcohol, and it's part of their practice. And so so the two attendants see their teacher accept this glass of chang, of beer, and drink it. So they're like, okay, have some beer. So they have some beer too, and then they, so the teacher sees this, and then they're walking home back to their own monastery. And I've heard this story two different ways, but he takes his cup, the teacher takes his cup, they're walking by the Ganges River, which has like dead animals floating in it, and like all the burning gas of all the dead bodies, just like disgusting beyond belief. And he takes his cup and he takes a big swath of the water from the Ganges River and like knocks it back and drinks it. And then he looks at his two attendants and he's like, well, please help yourself. You drank what I was drinking before, so by all means, join me now too. And they're like, we're not going to drink that, we'll die. Which is just the point that apparently to this one person, there's a level at which alcohol, say, as a rule, could be considered a problem with your spiritual practice, and then there might be a point at which that it just no longer affects you in the same way that it does. Like, discipline, that was the word I was looking for. Tame's the first thing, discipline. It's like when we're babies with things, we need rules that keep us confined, right? A kindergartner needs to be told, you just don't go outside of that fence, right? But when we get to be in middle school, or whatever, 4th grade, no, you can go outside the fence, stop at the corner, look both ways, and then cross the street safely, right? And then we get to be in middle school, cross the street, get on the bus, and you can go downtown and go to a movie. Like, we get more, as we get older, we get more capacity to stretch because we can understand more. And the whole path works exactly the same way. In the beginning, discipline means tamed, and it's a very kind of like, the stricter the code that we sometimes need to live by, it keeps us safe. Because my mind doesn't know a kindergartner doesn't know how to safely go navigate out in the world in busy streets and get on a bus and go downtown by themselves. That's not within their scope. But later that will be within their scope. Just like later it becomes our job to do this kind of fine-tuning discernment that you're talking about. And those are the hard questions. Hard questions. Awesome. Sarah, I'm so glad you're here. We are just going to take a break.
I was actually hoping to come in while you were on break.
Okay, perfect. You did, basically, because I wanted to take a break, and then we just went over. So, yeah. How long does everybody want the break? It's 3:07 now. We're here until 5. What I was originally thinking was an hour, but we don't have to take that if people don't need it. We could take 45 minutes. We could take 25 minutes. We could do whatever you guys need.
I mean, the class is till 5. Right?
It is till 5, yeah.
I was thinking, my thinking is 20 minutes.
Is that enough? Does
And
anybody?
then you do an hour and a half more teaching.
Let's take 30. Let's take 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then there's tea and some snacks here. And if you're really hungry, right on the corner, 2 blocks away, there's awesome lots of places. They do tend to be slow, but they're probably not busy now. So they have chai, coffee, food, everything. Okay. So it is 3:10 now. We will come back at 3:40. That's actually 32 minutes. Hi, Sarah. Hi.
I'm going to get a restaurant. Do you want anything?
I do not.
Okay.
I'm doing a kitchery cleanse.
Oh, okay.
So actually.